Hello and welcome to the Engineer Your Success, Leadership, and Life Harmony Like a Mother show. I'm your host, Kinia, award-winning investigative journalist turned maternity leave and working motherhood strategist. And I'm a mom of two rambunctious boys. And we are going through some interesting stuff this week during this season of quarantining. That is our reality with my family right now. So, I personally know how challenging it can be to become a new mom or a working mom. But we at Pros and Babes never want you to be alone with the isolation of trying to figure out work-life balance, work-life harmony on your own. So that's why we're here on this podcast to help you redefine your identity as a new mom, as a working mom, and to equip you with the tools so that you can get the promotions you want, regain the intimacy in your marriage, and find community, right, with an outstanding community of fellow moms. And today we are talking about leadership and igniting your passion and finding your purpose with Dr. Johanna Pagonis. She is the CEO of the leadership consulting firm Sinogap Solutions. She's an international speaker and host of a business management podcast titled Tackle Tuesday. I love that title. Johanna is also the author of the book, Choose to be a Leader Others Would Want to Follow, which grew out of her desire to support executives and managers and learning how to become emotionally intelligent leaders that can achieve organizational success while inspiring and motivating others. This is something that so many of us aspire to today. Welcome, Johanna.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I have to be honest, when I thought it was going to be pre-recorded and when I found out it was live, I was like, oh, no pressure. It's been a while since I've done a live show, but thank you for having me.
You're going to be great. So our show is both live and then we publish it as a podcast. So some of you might be listening on their drive or while nursing their baby or on a walk with their kiddos. So, great opportunity to apply leadership principles, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we are having this chat in February and backstage, you and I were talking about how we're really being tested in this time of the year, right? And you said, oh, it's good to know that I'm not alone. Are you feeling it this winter? Are you feeling the winter blahs?
I felt like I had a lot of energy in November and December. Could be also, I was quite busy with my business, but then January hit and I felt like I crashed a bit and then started to come out of it. And then now this week and last week, I feel like I'm forcing myself to get up and find inner strength and motivation, which is unusual for me, but I'm sensing that I'm not alone in that feeling.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to connect on that. And I know that so many women in our community feel it too, feel it deeply. Many of us love to travel and have not seen different places in a long time. The days can blend together. And for so many of us, we have high pressure, demanding jobs and careers that is truly testing our leadership. So let's dive right into the juicy part of the topic about leading yourself in very difficult times when your emotional resources are depleted. Many of us are facing sleep deprivation, kids who are sick, kids who could not get the vaccine yet, working a full-time job while having kids at home and still performing, right? So what do you recommend for anybody right now who is just feeling it, being stretched on all sides, aspired to leadership? It was like the thing growing up, you want to be a leader, it's important. Well, now you are a leader, and sometimes, boy, is it ever lonely. So what should our listeners tap into right now as they face unprecedented challenges?
That's a really good question. I'll answer the question with a bit of a personal story. I think because it illustrates something that actually we were talking about backstage earlier, where we think we've attained something in our life, and then we realized, no, we still have to work on it a little bit. We have to remind ourselves of sometimes even the things that we teach others, and finding that inner source of strength to constantly be resilient I have a nice personal story around that. When I started my business, it was right before the pandemic. And although I felt like I had a lot of entrepreneurial spirit within me, you really don't know what it takes until you launch your own business and you don't have that protective, cushy, regular, stable income always coming in, right? And I thought I was resilient, but it got really tested during that time. And I actually sought out the support of a therapist. My husband's like, I'm really concerned about you. Why don't you just reach out? Through his job, I could access a therapist through the services, the employee services. So I did. And as I was speaking to her, she said something and she goes, this is interesting, Johnny. When I asked you to explain to me what you do, you said that you help people find their purpose. What's your purpose? And I said, it's to help individuals be happy in life through their work. Like, I think, why does work always have to be something we have to do? Why can't it be something we love to do? So I help people connect what they love to do with why they do it, right? So finding that source of purpose around, why do I go to work every day? And how does it align to something that I love to do? So just helping them work through that, identify what you love to do, actually write it down, think it through, and then align it to what you actually do in work. Aligning your work with your purpose can be that motivating force to help you keep going forward, at least in your
Yeah.
professional life. And then I stopped, and actually I started to cry because I realized, why aren't I applying that to myself? I forgot to apply that principle teaching that I give to others to myself. And I said, that's the source of energy I need to find that will keep me going forward. There was a lot of self-doubt creeping in. I wasn't sure if what I was putting out there in the community was a service that people would value and want to actually invest and purchase. I really felt alone. And when I went back to my purpose, why I'm actually doing this, I thought, I do have something of value to give. And then I remember in January, when through the ATB online women's program, that's a special program to help women entrepreneurs, that's where I met you. And one of the things that you said in the community Facebook page was, don't give up. Because I posted, oh, I feel alone again. I feel like I'm going through this again. I feel like I'm putting myself out there and no one's responding. It's really scary and discouraging. And you said, stick to your guns. Like, just, you're doing this for a reason. You will help others, but you just need to keep pushing forward and believe. And so two things. One, spend time to understand, what is your purpose, right? If you want to go for that promotion, why? Really, what is it? Why do you want that? Is it just for the benefits? Or is there some intrinsic source of motivation that you're fulfilling? Is it the external reward or the internal reward that's keeping you going forward? So spend some time to dig deep and answer that question for yourself. And then surround yourself with, I read it through Forbes and I love it. I'm swapping out the term network with success circle. Surround yourself with, find out who's in your success circle. People who will support you in your failures as much as they do in your successes. Know that you can also be in their success circle, and it can be reciprocated, right? Because it's also very empowering to know that you can help somebody else in need. So I would say, I think those two things: find that intrinsic source of motivation within, and ensure that you surround yourself with people that love you and will be that champion for you as you are for them.
I love that story so much, and it brings tears to my eyes that you remember last year, because it's true. When you launch a crowdfunding campaign, it is so unnerving. I just went through my own Instagram stories when I did a crowdfunding campaign 2 years ago, and I came across a post where I was kind of no filter, no makeup, just a sleep-deprived day, and just opening up and telling people, like, this is hard. This is hard to put yourself out there and, risk failing publicly. But I now saw in your own feed that you launched your program and you had a dozen women enroll in a cohort. So tell us about, I really want to explore deeper, if somebody's maybe 10, 15, 20 years in their career and they're having like this now what moment, right? Their skills are solid, they are appreciated, but perhaps they don't feel as connected to the impact of their work because they're in a large organization and they don't directly feel how their work is really making a difference, right? They can feel like a paper pusher, yet often a bit of exploring can make you realize that, well, maybe you're more back there in the office, but thanks to you, people are getting energy in their houses and they're able to cook food, right? That's a lot of the conversations I have with my engineer clients. They feel so far removed from the end product that sometimes they don't feel the impact. So tell us, what have you noticed in your cohort of, I think, about a dozen women connecting that passion with purpose? If you can talk about some case studies at a high level, whatever you're allowed to reveal, right? What are some golden nuggets that came out of this experience?
Right. Yeah, so there's 13 women in the program. We launched it in the beginning of January. So, oh my God, I think we're a good halfway through, but at the midpoint, right? And yeah, I do hear that. It's interesting that you said that. And I kind of felt like that too when I was in my career. And I guess when I launched my business, putting yourself out there, but not always hearing the impact you have, that could be a true source of inspiration, knowing the impact you have on others. But when you don't get that feedback, it's hard to find that inner source of strength to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And the other day, actually it was yesterday, so we had a workshop yesterday, and one of the women in the program, she's very, very high up in her organization, and so she's not always deeply connected to the front lines and how the decisions that she's making are being rolled out or are influencing or impacting others. And sometimes she feels like she has to make decisions that make her unpopular. And so we explored a little bit around, well, first of all, what are your inner expectations? What are the expectations that you have for yourself? And how can you get that feedback from others to know if the expectations that you have for yourself are actually reasonable or not reasonable? Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that let me dive in. This is an interesting question. So I'm almost like working through it live.
Yes, no problem.
I think one of the things that we uncovered was we put a lot of expectations on ourselves in terms of what we think people want from us.
Mm-hmm.
And that impacts the decisions that we make or the decisions that we think we should be making. And this theme of I'm not very popular when I need to make these decisions kind of was coming out in our conversations. And I think that goes back to like, well, what are your expectations of what your role is as a leader and what your responsibilities are? And we did bring it back to what your purpose is, right? So what are you there to do? Why are you in that position? What are your main roles and responsibilities? What are you trying to achieve? And then how do you work with the members on your team to achieve that? So I think kind of going back to that is really important, because if you really want to know the impact your decisions are making, good or bad, all you need to do is connect to the people that work with you, starting with your direct reports. And you can even go to laterally to your colleagues, your peers, and engage them in a conversation and just ask them some questions, right? Even as you're making the decisions, seek input from others. Through the research that I've been doing, I realized that one of the things that comes out of the research is that women are better able to create diverse and inclusive workplaces. They seem to be better at making decisions in a collaborative manner versus a very unidirectional way of making a decision. I call that female power in many ways, being empathetic and being aware of your behavior, the decisions you make, how they may influence others for better or for worse. And one of that source of power is being able to listen, ask questions, and actually really care what other people say. We're better collaborators. At least that's what the research is showing us than some of our male counterparts. Obviously, this is a generalization. So I would say tap into that natural strength that you have. And if you want to know the impact that you're having, just talk to people, find out. If you're going to make a decision and you're not sure, speak to the people on your team. Get their thoughts and opinion. Be non-directive in how you converse with people by asking them more open-ended questions is, I think, a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Work through that. Okay. That makes sense, I hope.
Absolutely. Well, I think growing up, maybe, we had this idea that things are perhaps cut and dry and clear, like you've made it or you failed, right? You're successful or you're not successful. And as we grow up, we realize that it's funny saying that because I'm fully in adulthood, but it just feels like it was yesterday that I was in my early 20s jumping into my career. And yet, I pulled up some pictures from 20 years ago when I competed to be part of an economic mission to China, Junior Team Canada. And I looked at the date and I reached out to some people I knew back then. It's 20 years, right? So I'm making tons of parentheses as I'm saying that and probably getting a little bit sidetracked. But when it comes to impact, one of the ways I like to explore it with our community, with our clients, is mapping out an impact map, right? And so many of them are in energy, they're transitioning into renewables. And I help them think about all the people they are impacting on a daily basis. So there are so many domains. There's their families, right? There's the community, there's the environment that we impact through our action. There's even the legal system and our work, right? And so mapping that out, we have about 7. I'm probably not naming all of those. What people we impact through our hobbies and our arts. Work is just one single domain out of so many impact maps, right? Impact spheres that we have. And so for people who are a little bit lost about the next season of their lives, what they want to do, I help them reflect, who do you already have impact on? Who do you want to impact in the future? And what kind of legacy you're building? So when we talk about purpose and vision, I often have my clients think, and you had that question before we jumped on the podcast, what were your kids or nieces or nephews or, kids say about you in 25 years? Because that's the legacy you're building. So I'm circling back now to those pictures I posted about Junior Team Canada. My mom was an international trader. She took me and my father all around the world. I was in Hong Kong at the age of 11. We really, I saw her, and now I look at how much I followed in her footsteps, willingly or unwillingly, right? So when I was 17 and the opportunity came to compete with Junior Team Canada, I was like, I'm doing it. And I ended up being the youngest person there, right? Doing that. So when we think about impact, there's so many ways to project that into the future. And when to weave into what you were saying in your conversation, if you decide meaningfully how you're going to make an impact, perhaps you're going to leave every room in a more positive state. Whenever you have an interaction with people, you will come out of it leaving people smiling, optimistic, and energized for the next steps. Maybe you're going to be really good at solving technical problems, and you're going to be the person that everybody can rely on, to make sure that this formula is fact-checked and that you're securing the safety of workers. Maybe you're going to be known as a leader of families, a parent who is very intentional, right? And made values-driven decisions. So you can make those choices. And then, if you know what kind of impact you want to make, and you know that the way to make that impact will be full of stumbling blocks. And sometimes you're going to make the right decisions, and sometimes you're going to make decisions that will hurt people, right? So you weave that intentionality with having those conversations and inclusivity. I think that can be so powerful, right?
Agreed. And I'm also thinking as you're speaking, let's start with ourselves. Let's share the impact that people have had on us with others, and role model that behavior. We usually don't share with people, right? Oh, you had a really positive impact on me. I guess in some ways I did that when I shared the story about how you posted in the community to something that I wrote.
Yeah.
So you had that positive impact on me. And I think it goes a long way to share that with others, because then you feel like I am making a difference. I'll continue to do that. So if you're in a position to share that with somebody, do so.
Absolutely. And no, it made me so glad that you shared the story about the therapist. I mean, I love my therapist. So many of the women I work with, we rely on our therapist to just maintain any shred of sanity at a time where we're really being tested. Let's go back to that sense of purpose, Johanna. So I had asked you a question: in 25 years, what would you like your kids or your nieces or nephews, or your circle of descendants, whoever, the next generation, what would you like them to say about you?
Okay. And I can't remember what I wrote, but I think it was probably something to the effect of, I made them feel loved
Yes.
and valued. I see, I've seen parents, and I don't think any parent does this intentionally, but almost kind of destroy the inner spirit of their children, from some of the things that they say and the things that they do and how hard they are on them, and controlling at times. I grew up, Greek immigrant parents. My parents were very loving and affectionate, but my friends' families, the dynamics were very different. And I walked away from that realizing I want to love my kids unconditionally, truly unconditionally. I don't think people, at least some of those parents, didn't know what that meant, but they make a mistake. That's okay. I love you in spite of it. Let's learn from that. I mean, you can teach children how to be resilient just by letting them know it's okay if you make a mistake. It's totally okay. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
The world will look the same before and after you've made the mistake, right? And so if my children, my grandchildren, my stepchildren, my grandchildren can turn around and say, you know what, she always made me feel loved. And it was so much fun hanging out with her. I've served my purpose as a family member, whether that's my sister, my parents, my friends, or my stepchildren and grandchildren. I feel like I served my purpose if they can say that about me.
Yes. I'm thinking too, the pandemic, 2 years, and sitting down with my husband and thinking about what principles will guide us through this difficult time. I didn't realize how extremely tested I would be as a mother. These 2 months have been so hard. As you know, last January, a year ago, I lost my father, and then my grandmother, and then my uncle, all within 7 months. Well, my dad and my grandma within a week, and then my uncle
Wow.
within half a year. So my emotional resources have really, really been tested. And I'll be super transparent here. It scares me as a mother because, I don't find myself being as emotionally available as I would like to. And of course, I read a lot of evidence-based articles, and they say that it's very important to be emotionally present for your kids. They might not notice maybe the quantity, but it's the quality. So this is a very personal question. Maybe you've come across it. I don't know if the answer will be improvised, but I'm sure there are other parents like me who feel so stretched thin right now. And we worry about the impact of our own. Well, many of us are flirting with burnout, right? Or we kind of keep on pushing through because it just feels like we don't have a choice, or we want to be patient. We say one more month, maybe 2 more months, maybe we're close to the end. Maybe like these childcare situations will be resolved. It's just like one more day, or I've worked so hard to get to where I'm, and I just like, and then one day turns into a week and a week turns into a month. And you realize that you've been pushing through for months on end, right? And despite being depleted and trying your best to be your best still. What are your thoughts on self-leadership in times of where we cannot get the self-care required, or we cannot replenish our cups the way we would like to, because it's pretty much crisis after crisis? How are you empowering people to stay connected to the purpose, passion, and ultimately what's right for them and their families in times of repeated crises? Mm-hmm. I'm putting you on the spot. Like, oh my gosh, Kinia, what's this question?
Yeah, it's a good question. We talked about it yesterday in our workshop, and somebody said, I always feel like that I have to put fires out, and there's a sense of urgency to get all of this work done before I go home. And then when I go home, I'm just burnt out. Just this catch-22 where I can't catch up. I can't renew properly. And one of the themes that came out was that there was just this need to always stay late, always do more. And so it was funny because it kind of took us off the path of the workshop. And I said, it's okay. Sometimes you have to pivot. If a need emerges in the group, you pause and you pay attention to it. And what I did was I actually asked them to re-examine kind of like their perceptions, their frame of reference of how they interpret things, and the source of pressure. Like, what is your power stressors? What causes you stress? Like I would ask somebody or what I asked them to do was identify the top one, or even at least the top two. And then to start to work through, how does that stress manifest itself in you in terms of your emotions, your thoughts, and then your behaviors? Start to identify it. Take the time to become more aware of it. The more aware we are of how we feel, how our thoughts impact our emotions, our behaviors, the better able we are to regulate it, not control it 100%, but regulate it. And maybe realize that some of the things that are actually causing us stress because we think that that's the priority is not truly a priority. And if I can move it from the absolute priority list to the non-priority list, I may be able to find some time that I didn't even know I had to renew. And so one of the things that I had them do was a simple exercise, like grab a piece of paper and have 2 columns. And one column is, this is a priority. When this happens, you drop absolutely everything, and all of your attention and your emotion goes into this to deal with it. The other column is not a priority. It could wait several hours. You can maybe even wait a day or a couple of days. And so I had them start with the non-priority list. What's a non-priority? And so they filled that list out, and then they did the priority list. And then I asked them to look at their list and to share, what have you noticed through this activity? And they all said, my non-priority list is really long. My priority list is very short. And then even through the conversation, they realized, well, this is a priority. When my boss flags the email priority, it's a priority. And then I said, well, is it his or her priority, or is it your priority? Because just because somebody flags an email priority, just because it's your crisis, it's not my emergency. And I know it's your boss, but when we talk about self-leadership, part of that is leading up and being able to communicate with the people in your life, establishing what's really a priority and what you need to drop everything to do. I think also communicating with others. Like, I've made this discovery that these are the things that are absolute priorities, and I make the commitment to follow through on that when they pop up. These things I commit to get back to or deal with or address in the next hour or a couple of days. And communicating that, then people know what your boundaries are, right? And then you can test your boundaries, because that takes confidence too.
Mm-hmm.
Establishing your boundary and then holding it firm is, we always find excuses to, like, permeate through the boundary, right? Find things to seep through the boundary, but test it. We're human. So come up with one boundary and just test it. See what happens.
Yes.
If you're able to hold it and learn from that experience, it'll develop your confidence, which can also help you renew. Confidence is a source of renewal, right? We can find energy and strength when we develop confidence. So doing these little activities, like what's a priority, what's not, and establishing those boundaries and then communicating them and testing them can help you find precious time that you didn't even know you had, and probably a lot more time than you thought you had, to engage in a renewal strategy. And then do what it takes. Like, so sometimes it's taking a nap, reading a book. Other times it could be just practicing a mindfulness exercise and showing yourself self-compassion, finding a moment, like 2 minutes to just sit down and breathe, can actually go a long way and help. Little things, right? It's not these big grandiose things like going to Mexico or booking half a day at the spa. Sometimes it's these little moments that we can, and I don't want to say steal we're not stealing time. We're finding time that belongs to us and utilizing it to its maximum capacity so we can keep doing what we need to do. One more thing, I don't like to blah, blah, blah and talk, but I just thought of something else, Kinia, I wanted to share. I remember one of the psychological courses I was taking on family therapy and dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher, or the presenter, I should say, had like a sculpture, and it was on a balance.
Yeah.
And each piece on the sculpture represented a family member. And he said, what usually happens is all of the demands is placed on the mother to do something, right? And so he actually removed that piece off the balance structure, if that makes sense, to represent like just how overloaded she was. She just could no longer be present for the family because there was just too much on her, and everything went out of whack. And so he talked about the importance of, especially the individual, the mother, that usually takes on a lot of those responsibilities, that she has to find those boundaries for herself. Because how can you serve, and this is true for leadership, how can you serve anybody if you yourself are not resilient? You can't be present. So the more you sacrifice, you're really actually sacrificing the relationships that other people, that you have with other people, and those relationships are precious, right? So if you can make time for yourself, you can be there for other people in the way you want to be and the way they deserve to have you be. That makes sense.
Yeah, there were so many good nuggets in this. I love the priority exercise. I was thinking of my last few days, being intentional and being flexible on the road to self-discovery. There's so many things I want to say right now. When I think about, we like to work with 12-week plans in our group, also 25-year visions, 12-week plans, 1-year visions, all of that, just playing around with the different tools. And I've tried, what has worked really well for me is trying to stick to these 12-week commitments and chapters, because your life does change every 12 weeks, more or less, right? There are different priorities, different seasons. And so, in the fall, I consistently went swimming almost every day in the morning. I got up early and I had the stamina to do it. And then I had a back injury, and suddenly all of a sudden I couldn't, and I had to focus on getting physiotherapy for my back. And then my health routine got out of whack. And then I really realized that I missed times with my kids. So instead of re-embarking on my fitness routine right away, I would really focus on snuggling my kids in the morning and in the evening, right? And often fall asleep with them. So giving myself permission, I really value consistency, but also realizing that I have these different chapters, these different seasons, and okay, maybe half of the year I stuck to my health goals. Maybe the other half of the year I prioritized other things that were really important to me. And the older I get, the more less I beat myself up for not being as like military about those commitments, right? And what I go back to in terms of my own self-leadership, I think that has not shifted for me in the last 2 years, are my 3 core values of faith, love, and accountability. And I've had to rely on faith so much, especially with my dad's passing. I never expected that my dad would pass suddenly, just as I was going all in on my business. I had so many difficult decisions to make. And now I just don't take life for granted. All the paradigms we grew up with about saving for retirement and like working for 25, 30, 35 years, all of those pieces, it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle that crashed in my head. And I have to give myself permission to not, to let my convictions shift or to let my game plan shift. But the values piece, the faith, it has not floundered. It's the thing that I always consistently go back to, even in the toughest moments, even in the ones where, the weeks where I feel so blah. And right now in February, it's just like you, it can be tough to get up and feeling a little bit more depressed. But I always tell myself, like, God has a bigger plan for us. I'm going to look back on this and I'm going to see so much clarity in what I learned, even if right now it feels like those globes, those snow globes, right? So you give us just quite a few really good tools to navigate those moments where we feel like we're in that snow globe. We don't understand and it feels kind of senseless. But staying connected to our values, staying connected to a sense of purpose, knowing that every day we're making progress. Like today, instead of really raising my voice at my kids, I actually sat down, I looked them in the eyes and I said, no, you know what, this is not kind. This is not how we want to behave. At least with that small step forward, I stayed accountable, I stayed loving, and I stayed faithful, and I'm making a place, I'm taking a step in the right direction. Do you relate to anything of what I've said right now in my little ramble here?
One of the participants in the program said this. She said, sometimes it's more important to be value-driven than goal-driven. Mm-hmm. So the way I interpreted that was, we have intrinsic sources of motivation and intrinsic sources of motivation. Our goals are those extrinsic sources of motivation that keep us going. Yeah. But sometimes, like you said, you have to shift that. So what keeps you going is if you focus on your values. That's the intrinsic source of inspiration you need to help you pivot and always move in the right direction. I call the values your lighthouse. So when you're in the snow globe, or I say when you're lost at sea, just look for the lighthouse. It'll guide your way. So I'm picking up what you're throwing down.
And thank you. And, when I think of my own kids and wanting to teach them leadership and self-leadership, the one thing I want to instill in them is faith. I know that they're surrounded by a bunch of brains, like everybody in my family on my side and on my husband's side is so smart, right? Everybody is very educated. And I feel like those things are going to pick up by osmosis. But I think faith in love, faith in God, faith in hope, faith in a silver lining, no matter how difficult things are. I want to give them that gift. I want to model that for them because it is consistently the force that has, I would say, saved me from really crumbling in some of the most painful moments of my life, right? You can have all the intelligence, all the IQ in the world, but if you don't have the hope and faith and belief that there's an immense source of love out there, it can be so tough to soldier on through difficult moments like this one, right? Winter, second year of a pandemic. When is this going to end?
Right. And don't underestimate how powerful role modeling is. They see you, they watch you, they're observing you, whether you're a parent or a leader, and you're setting that good example for them. Don't underestimate how powerful that is. It's extremely powerful.
Yeah. Well, thank you also for holding space for me in that conversation. I hope that to our listeners, it will be useful. It'll be relatable. I've opened up a lot today and, and gave myself the chance to learn some tools from you, reconnect with those important tools, and remember that fun story from last year. That was really nice. It's very nice to reconnect with you in that regard a year later. Johanna, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience as we wrap up our show? Obviously, we're going to ask where they can find you, but is there anything else that this conversation brought up that you would like to leave our listeners with today?
I think it just reminded me like the importance of showing ourselves some grace and to allow ourselves to feel the emotions that we're feeling, not to ruminate them and let them kind of engulf us in a fiery ball, but to just pay attention to them, appreciate them, but to keep moving forward, right? It's okay. It's okay to say, I'm feeling tired today. I need to sleep in. I need to take a nap. But I'm doing really good. I'm kicking ass every day. And I think that's the only thing I would say. Show yourself compassion and grace and know that you're making a difference. That was a good reminder for me today and a source of energy now. I have a little boost of energy that'll take me through the rest of the week and the rest of February. So thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I was looking forward to this. So Johanna, where can people find more about you and about Sinogap Consulting?
Yeah. So, just go to our website, Sinogapsolutions, all one word.com, and it'll bring you to our website. And through the website, we have so much information there that you can learn about us. We have like an online academy, so you can click on the courses tab and see all of the courses and the programs we offer. Like one of the things that we do very well is customize workplace learning strategies through leadership development for companies that has a blended approach, coaching, online courses that are self-paced, but also customized, very interactive workshops, face-to-face or virtual. It's what we specialize in. And then also the Women Up program, which was my passion that I finally launched. We did the first cohort. We're doing it now in January. The second one will be in September. You can actually enroll. But if you want more information, just go to the website, all the contact information. Scroll down, you'll see contact information. You can contact us, and I'd love to answer any questions you may have.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We'll see you backstage in just a second. And to our dear listeners, if you found this episode useful, if it brightened your day, and if you know of a mom, dad, or leader who needs to be listening to this, please share this episode on your favorite platforms, and please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. I'm your host, Kinia Romanovska, and we will see you next time.